Oopsie. Hello. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. That was a little bit of a blip, but okay. Yeah, I just was sorting out everything else and forgot to to take it off. But anyway, welcome to the Full Quota podcast. This is your weekly South African cricket podcast. Some say number one, some say number two. We're going to argue about this, but we're there at the top. Um, Remember, you can find us on X at Full Quota Pod. Please follow us there. Please subscribe to the One World Sports Radio channel, where the video version is. You see our lovely faces as you're watching. But we've also got an audio version. Please go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and search Full Quota Podcast, just like it is there, and you will find us in that on that platform, right? And you'll hear us from an audio perspective, and we're building an audio following. So guys, please do send through comments. We do appreciate them. Please do send rate and review the show on these various platforms. We really do appreciate it. Want to get this going as far and wide. Before we get into anything, Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, mate. I think I'm sporting a haircut since the last time we chatted, I think. But otherwise, all good, mate. All good.
Good. Yeah, our last episode was our interview with Ernest Kim, the captain of the Northern Cape Heat, and his team started the CSA T20 challenge as well. So we kind of used it as a little bit of a preview to the CSA T20 challenge. Also gave you a preview of the teams on the back end of that show. So if you want to go back and see what we thought about the teams and who we thought would win, please do go check that. So big things happening this week. We've got two SA emerging sides in Ghana for the African Games. The women's section for the African Games in cricket has started. It's a T20 competition led by Nondumiso Shangase. A couple of former Proteas there. Faye Tunnicliffe is there. You've got Annery Dirksen. So it's a pretty strong team. However, the pretty strong team went and lost to Namibia in the first game. They did manage to win the remaining two games to make it to the semi-finals. It looks like at this point in time the game is still going on, but they had Uganda 36 for 5, chasing 120. Do you have any update on that, Tim?
Our little group had reported that we were in the final. I haven't seen the scorecard, but our little private WhatsApp group did
Oh yeah,
report
the
that
infamous
that
WhatsApp group reported that we won. Okay, which is awesome, and we love it. So that's cool. So well done to them. They're probably going to either come up against Zimbabwe, who I assume Sean May is in that team. So that's going to be quite interesting. And or Namibia, depending on how that second semi-final goes. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing this week that came through was an interview by Ongama Twabe on his interview with Shukri. And that was quite an interesting one, Tim, because Shuki effectively told us that Temba Bavuma is moving to 3. Tony is going to take over from Dean with Aiden, and then you're going to try and bring in Stubbs or David Bedingham into that middle order for the test side, right? It was quite interesting. So I had a couple of thoughts around this. I was like, Australia tried this with Steve Smith, trying to move a number 4 to either open and it hasn't worked out well, but yeah, he had that one massive stand against the West Indies. But the question of Timber batting at number 3 is something I'm not necessarily comfortable with, but okay. I'm happy with the Tony DeZorzi promotion, but also I think you need to pick one between Bedingham and Stubbs and give them a long run. It's unfortunate for the other, but you need to pick one because you can't have both of them just hang around. Obviously, you can hang around as a reserve batter, but that's the thing. And then obviously the other thing that came up was obviously Ryan Rickleton is fighting with Kyle Verreynne, but currently right now Kyle Verreynne is the incumbent, and with the amount of test cricket we have, it might be a year before we even see Ryan Rickleton get his chance. Did you manage to get a hold of that read that interview?
I
And
did. I quote tweeted it. With my I my observations, so we say.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, look. I get his Stubbs fanboy moment. I get it. I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might not work, and I just hope he realizes that it might not work. I appreciate his frankness in the interview. I think that was refreshing. Often, when we have these sorts of interviews, there's a lot of
Mm.
cloud there, and we're not really able to make a much of the interview. In this interview, we were. My objection, or my slight objection, though, was his comments on the fast bowling reserves of the country. There is
Mm.
not a single country in the world that is not envious about our pace bowling reserves. I'm sorry, there really isn't. That final, the fact that we didn't have a genuine fast bowler in the final, was a disappointment. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And
Yes.
it was noticeable. It was. But it is not an indication of South Africa being poor in pace reserves. And the pace reserves are extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. I'm not going to go to a list, but if you've got Gwena Mpaka, who right now could play for the Proteas,
And
who's still
Tristan
at
Lees
school,
as well, because
eh,
he's also quite
who's
quick.
still who's still at school, then you have got no problems. You have got no issues whatsoever. Um, but I appreciate his frankness. I enjoyed the fact that he was open with Ngama, and that was good, because we often we often end up with a lot more questions than answers. I don't think we were
Mm.
after that interview. I think we had a lot of questions answered, which is what we want.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, and great article by Ongama. Finally we got an answer, and we kind of know where we're going. One of the interesting thing was it kind of felt like Keegan Peterson's career in the Proteas is done. And that kind of gave you a sense of where it is. But yeah, look, I've got no issues with the Stubbs in Bettingham. I think he should be Bettingham, and Bettingham should be batting at 5. Obviously, the question is who's going to be batting at 4. My assumption is that Tristan's going to bat at 4, which is a look. He's done well for the Warriors this season. There, look, Cameron Green is batting really well at 4 for Australia. So I'm looking at that going, maybe he's onto something. But yeah, it does. My question is, does Tristan have the ability? And maybe you could say the same thing with Timber, which is why a lot of the international commentators look at Aiden Markram and say he's a 4, because Aiden's got that ability to be able to score hundreds and thousands of runs at number 4, like the great number 4s you've seen in these teams across the world. And the question obviously is, he's young, he has a very high ceiling. Does he have that in him? Right now, Shukri will say yes. The rest of us are like, would like to see more. I think technique wise, someone like a Markram might make sense at 4, and I thought maybe it'd be to Zozie and somebody new at the top, with Aiden going down, and 2-4, and then you have Bettingham at 5, and then you have Verena at 6, and then obviously you'll then decide whether it's Vian or Thingy. He also said Marco Janssen's is not a 7 at international level, which kind of gives you a sense that Vian might be in the next starting 11, which I've got
There,
no issues
there,
with, because Vian is Vianing, and when Vian is Vianing, he's a man in a crisis, and he does really well. So he sounds more mature now, Vian. So hopefully it can translate. I'm not going to take that Australia T20 series with a pinch of salt, or ODI series, because yeah, nobody cares about. If you don't care about ODIs, ICC, if people generally don't care about T20s, the public, I'm not gonna judge Vian on those performances, right? So,
no.
um, but let's see what he does in the red ball stuff, because he's a better cricketer right now. But anyway, the show's not about talking about that. We're about talking about the T20 challenge. But we've got some kind of breaking news, or news that came through today. We found out that the Tuskers will no longer be hosting, and that's the team in Maritzburg, the AET Tuskers, will no longer be hosting games at the Peter Maritzburg Oval. They'll be hosting their games at at Kingsmead, largely because of the unfit nature of the ground itself and the facilities around. I know if you know Werner, who's a friend of the show, if you go follow him at Veries, Werries, he has a thread going on Twitter, and there's some articles now starting to come out. But Veries broke the story essentially. Werner, you need to be a journalist, by the way. I know you're going to listen to this and watch this. You need to be a journalist because I don't know how you know half the things we in cricket anyway. He broke the story saying that there's a couple of things happening at Pietermaritzburg Oval. There were pins found on the field after a rally by the mayor, or something was happening at the ground by the mayor of Maritzburg. The nets are old and dilapidating. There's a lot of stories happening there, and the ground is deemed unfit. Now, my only question is, they managed to play a 4-day series there. They managed to play a 1-day cup there. When did these things start deteriorating? Because I don't think it takes like 2 months for something to just go off or to be unfit when you started the season with it being fit. So a little bit of egg on the AET Tuskers management and CSA, but it's not good for a team being promoted that this is their situation, right? And it's just sad to see, Tim.
Yeah, look, I think it's a complicated one. I don't think it's one or other um, thing that has happened. But just to break it down a little bit, I think there were concerns of the overall conditions um, throughout the season. I think that there was probably a what's the word, an assumption that things the Nets would improve as the season went on, that they would go,
Mm,
because now they are now responsible for their ground. It's not Cricket South Africa looking at it. You are now, with the restructuring, you are now responsible of keeping things
mm.
up to a certain standard. Um, but so that was obviously an issue. That underlying issue was obviously there for much of the season, I would argue.
Yeah.
And then to top it on the 28th of February, the KZN Premier had a State of the Nation address on the ground. So that
State of the
is eight,
province. But yeah.
yeah, State of the Province, State of the Province.
Yes. Well,
Um,
they are a nation anyway, so it's fine.
yes, the that was 8 days before the start of the T20 competition.
Mm-hmm.
Why we've seen pictures on social media, why things like pins would be thrown onto the ground, I don't know. But you have 8 days to clear that up. That to me says that whatever clear up they did do was not sufficient, because subsequently players have, I heard, injured themselves. So you've got the initial problem with the nets and etc. The general lack of standard of equipment and things. And I think the previous coach alluded to this being a fact.
Yes.
And then you've got this event which happened 8 or 9 days prior to the T20 challenge. The two are different things, but they are linked because they are linked towards the general standard of the conditions at Pietermaritzburg, which is a real shame because they were at one point of the season nicely poised. There was there was a chance that they could stay up in Division One, and mathematically they could still do
They
it.
still can.
But if you look at their performances in this competition, their first two games, you look and you realize it's very, 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 very unlikely that that's going to happen, which is a real shame.
It is a real shame. And I think for me, if you're not going to sort yourself out from a management level, you're not you're on a road to getting yourself relegated, right? For instance, the Knights were similar, right? We didn't know of stories like this at the Knights, but with the talent pool that they had and the development pipeline that we can subsequently have seen in Division Two, how did they get relegated? You could ask yourself, and it's quite simple. It's just poor management, and not necessarily from a coaching perspective, but from the top. If you're not going to give your best players the best foot forward, you're going to ask yourself to go down. And another team that I think is also going to be in a similar thing are the Paul Rocks. You can just see what they're recruiting. Like, how are you? Um, and to a certain extent with the Tuskers, they all look like the squads look underprepared. You're asking yourself where they're going to get wickets, where they're going to get runs, and they those two teams to me look as though you might need a bit of a management shakeup. Now we know the Tuskers do need, but it's not only the Tuskers, right? It's everything else, and with everything that's been happening with CSA, and I don't want to throw that in and say the fish rots at the head and everything's going down. I'm not going to do that, but I know many people run to that. But there are we've got some really well-run franchises in this country or provinces in this country, and yes, you could say they're in the economic hubs. They're doing really, really well. But if you look at a franchise like Northwest Dragons, who managed to get a sponsor for the CSA T20, was auto investment. JB Mark's Oval looks pristine, looks insane. They even had stalls up. They even had vendors. It looked like they didn't have a big crowd, but it looked like they had they were prepared for the eventuality of them hosting a big crowd, right? And they drew some numbers. It wasn't big, but not everyone's gonna get a big enough crowd. I think they even have a bigger crowd than what we saw at the Wanderers on Friday night. So I look there, I'm like, that's the standard. They don't have a lot of money. That's not true. That shouldn't be an excuse, right? And also, Peter Matt, the Oval's getting money because the Premier's hosting stuff. Then, if you are doing stuff for the Premier, where did the Premier's people sit? The VIP areas, like, was everything up to standard for that? And yeah, so there's a lot of questions I have. I don't want to go in there. We want to talk about CSA T20, but yeah, Tuskers, really, if you want to get relegated, you could have just told us last year. We could have given someone else a chance. Like, honestly. But I feel sorry for the players. I think the players are trying to do the best they can in tough situations. And yeah, there's also a contractual element, right? If they get relegated, some contracts are not going to be or not going to be upheld. Some people are going to be without jobs. People are going to move around. Families are going to move around. And yeah, Tim, it's not good.
Yeah,
Not
look,
good at all.
When we spoke to Ernest Camp, he raised an interesting point, and it would have been interesting to do it. I'm not sure I agree with it, but I certainly agree with part of it. So we had this restructuring, and we did it for 2 years before we had the promotion relegation. I wonder if the first team that gets promoted should have been stayed up in Division 1 for two seasons. I wondered if that, because then it would give that team a proper base of this is what you need to do to stay in Division 1. But then, after that initial 2 period, then it's 1 season.
So
I just wonder.
I'll tell you why that can't work. Why I think that can't work is that then the teams in Division 2 that need to wait 4 years to get promoted. They only get in 4 years. They get 2 chances to get promoted.
So I was saying that yes, okay, yes. So it would be 4 years, but then after next season, it would be 1 year.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
I get that. It's just that the teams in Division 2, Easterns and Northern Cape, it would be slightly unfair. I thought it was they gave them a helping hand, especially Northwest and the Rocks, a helping hand by giving them initial 2 years in Division 1. But I don't think that can be sustainable, and largely from a competition perspective, because then if I'm in Division 2, I'm going to be stuck there for 4 years with with nothing to play for, right?
No.
So it's
I get it. No, and that's why I wasn't completely sold. I still liked it in my head, but it wasn't necessarily for the reasons that you raised. It wouldn't quite work. There
Okay.
needs to be something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on. Yeah.
Let's get into the business of the day. This week we
Yeah.
had the CSA T20 challenge, and boy, did the big boys arrive! Oh my word, the big boys came through. You'll see when I show you the table. But let's go through some of the results and chat through them. We had 8 games in Division 1. That started. Division 2 started earlier. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But to go through some of the games, I'm going to go through each game, and Tim, you'll give me a sense of what you thought about that game and anything interesting that you've picked up. First game of the CSA T20 Challenge 23-24 was the Warriors taking on the Tuskers in Gqeberha. Matthew, the Warriors scored 125, which was surprising against the Tuskers side, batting first. But Bretska 25-16 out of 16 balls. Javesh and Pillay, someone needs to watch out for, 29 of 23. Sian Tlebela of the Tuskers took 3 for 17, and Alindile Mtlechwa 3 for 19. The Tuskers got bowled out for 88 in 16.4 overs. Janssen took 4 for 19. Smith took 3 for 25. The Warriors missed out on a bonus point there. Unfortunate. The Warriors got a bonus point there. So they were the only team to actually get 5 points in that round. Tim, on that game, we spoke about how poorly the Tuskers were playing, and we weren't expecting much from them. But that 125 or 20 overs, was it a bad pitch?
It wasn't a bad pitch as such, but you wouldn't call it a T20 pitch. So it was a little bit difficult to. It didn't come onto the bat nicely. Let's put it that way. So you're looking at sort of 140. That's probably where that you would look
The
at
pass
the
score would have
score.
been. Okay.
Yeah, that's sort of.
It's just that the Tuskers don't have the batting firepower to even get to 100 and to even score a runner ball, which says a lot.
The thing here is, okay, so they're struggling, and I think they're struggling because of the standard, and I think they're struggling for the issues that will be raised. I think when you have those issues, psychologically they are going to affect you without question. But on the actual game itself, Marco Janssen and Nokia, they just did not have any answers at all. There are no comparisons in Division 2 cricket. You can't, there is no 6'9" or 6'10" or whatever he is. In Division 2, there isn't a guy who's bowling 150 clicks in Division 2. There isn't a comparison. So when you have those two guys right at the start, it's not surprising that they got beaten and beaten thumpily. You look at the score and you think, well, 125, they've got a chance. Not against that bowling unit. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Okay. Warriors got a bonus point victory there. Next game was Western Province going to Durban to take on the Dolphins. The Western Province batted first. They managed to get 148 for 8 after 20 overs. John O'Bird coming back from I'm assuming injury. Carl Simmons 25 for 22. Ogutlekele took 2 for 27 for the Dolphins. So did Petlugwaya 2 for 29. In reply, Jason Smith 27 of 19, but it was a bit of a tough showing there for the Dolphins, with Simmons and Pongwana and Nabe also taking 2 wickets. Came down to the final over, Tim, but the Dolphins couldn't get over the line.
Came down to the final over, but Province were the better team, and they were the better team by some distance. Dolphins are struggling. There's no doubt about it. They've got the personnel, but they're just not. They're not clicking. And I think actually that top 6 actually needs a non-Durban pitch. The bowlers are okay, but I'm sorry. That top 6 needs a pitch where the ball comes on nicely.
With a bit more pace and bounce.
Yeah. But John O'Bird. We'll talk about it in a subsequent game. I said if the Province were going to make the semi-finals, John O'Bird had to play. He had a better strike rate than he finished up with just before he got out. But he was a difference in terms of the batting. That's why he made 40. Um, it's great to see him back, and yeah, he's going to be very important for Province.
Okay. And to break the low scoring affair on Friday night, the Lions hosted the Paul Rocks in Johannesburg. The Lions with a Rickleton, Reza Hendricks, Timber Bavuma, Rassi van der Dissen, Vian Mulder, and Mitch van Buren top six, which could all be Proteas. So Mitch is the only one waiting for his chance. Scored 223 for 5. Rickleton scored 75. Van der Dissen scored 42, not out of 22 balls. I think Reza scored 28. Timber also scored 26. Just a mixed bag. Hardest for Yoon taking 3 for 45 for the Rocks. Yanaman Malan 61 or 41. Good for him to be in the runs again. As they got to 179 for 7. But the show from that second innings was Gwena Mapaka. Apologies for the misspells, my typing. He got 3 for 22 and Bjorn for 10, 2 for 21. The Lions won by 44 runs. It was the first time for us, Tim, to see Mapaka and Kagiso Rabada in tandem. What did you make of that? Were you as happy as I was watching them bowl and then watching Gwena bowl Yorker after Yorker after Yorker, because somehow this kid knows how to find the block hole?
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. We saw it at the 19 World Cup, and we said he was going to be a superstar. He's going to go through the levels. He's going to come up with the domestic setup, and he's going to do the business. And he absolutely nailed it. He's absolutely fitted in there perfectly. Yeah, it was great to see. On a pitch that was a run scoring pitch. There's no doubt about it. On that pitch, that was a 200 pitch without a doubt.
Yeah.
And you even saw with a Rock struggling team, they actually got a reasonable total in the end, even with losing those early wickets. But it was great to see. The future is bright for that kid, no doubt about it.
The future is bright for that kid. He was sensational. But let's talk about Rickleton, Reza, and Timber and Rusty. They're going to be fighting for 2 spots in that Proteas World Cup squad, along obviously with other players as well. Um, how I was baffled as to, obviously, I think Reza probably has that opening spot alongside Quinton, because I don't think Quinton's not going to play at this World Cup in America. So Rickleton, who's batting really well. We've also got Rassi, who's number 2 in the Pakistan Super League, and obviously Temba as well, who played in the Australia series. I don't know what Rob Walter's going to do, Tim, but in one team, it's headache. And yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
this look, yeah. So it's good headache for him, but the wider point here is the Proteas said to the new guys, no, this is our stage, and we're only going to be here for 3 weeks or 3 games or whatever it is. But during those 3 games, we are going to dominate, and we are going to dominate this tournament. And if you look at the run scorers and the new wicket takers, it's Shamsi, it's Nokia, it's Janssen, it's Rickleton, it's Reza, it's all of the Proteas. The Proteas guys have absolutely stood up in these initial stages, which is good. It's just very, very
Yeah.
good for the Proteas. It's going to be interesting to see the standard as they leave. It is obviously going to be a drop, but it is going to then bring the teams closer together, I think.
The only issue here for the other teams is that the Lions don't only lose Kagiso Rabada. Everyone else stays. And that's a
That's
really,
true.
really tough prospect for everyone else to Kagiso's gone, but there's Gwena Mapaka and Luto Supamla as well. And then
Yeah.
you still have these Protea batters that you need to contend with. So it's like the Lions of old. They've always had this top 6. It's been here for the last 10 years. The same thing. Nothing's changed. And they are producing the goods. But anyway, let's move on. The final game on Friday was the Titans taking on the Dragons in Centurion. Lots of Proteas on show there. And they came through. Markram, who's going to the IPL, scored 40 of 30. Rivaldo Munsami, 35 of 31. Miguel Pretorius for the Northwest Dragons, 3 for 18. Interesting chase there, because there was a point where we thought Northwest could pull a sneaky one there. Renat Fantonda had 48 of 33, Vian Liber 26 of 22. But once Liber left, it was just all she wrote from there as they struggled to get there. Shamsi 3 for 18, Junior Dollar 3 for 30. Age is nothing but age is just a number for Junior Dollar, and the Titans won by 13 runs there. Northwest, a sneaky team. We noted them as a sneaky one, but that batting lineup needs a lot of looking at.
Exactly. So they should never have lost this game. I'm sorry. They should never have lost this game, even with the Proteas laden Titan side, with the talent they had. The position they were in, with Fantonda playing really well, they should never have actually lost this game. There's no doubt about it. And we've seen it across the formats where they've had these gigantic collapses from absolutely, seemingly solid positions, and that's a huge issue. That's not just this competition. We've seen it in the 4-day series a few weeks ago, at least 2 times. That for me is a huge worry. So yes, they were sort of Division 1 side that could have caused some upsets in this tournament, and they still can. But I just think they need to be a lot better in their batting. The bowling's all right.
I find them.
We'll
talk about them in that second game, because I find that their approach is something that's a bit of a bother for me. But let's get on to Sunday's games. We had a full slate of games on Sunday. The Rocks took on the Titans in Paarl, 126 for 9 after 20 overs, 127 for 6. There's nothing I didn't expect there. Clyde Fortin, 33 of 28. Sean Van Berg, 22 not out of 16. Tabrez Shamsi, 4 for 23. Lazard Williams, 2 for 30. As Tim says, it's all the Proteas. Sponelo Makanya, 34 of 25. He's improved a lot in his T20 play. And Aaron Pangiso, 25 not out off of 9. He was going crazy at the back end of that game. And Mahima and Copeland, 2 for 22 each. Titans won by 4 wickets. This was an interesting one. Tim, very closer than I expected, especially with who the Titans are. But yeah.
Again, the Titans shouldn't have won. There's no doubt about it in my mind. The Titans should not have won this game. The pitch suited the Paarl Rocks. It was difficult to score. It was difficult to score easily, certainly. And I feel a little bit for this guy. And this guy hasn't played any cricket this season at all until this tournament. He might have played in the One Day Cup, but he's played in a minimal cricket.
One Day Cup was a long time ago.
Yeah, yes, exactly. He's played a minimal cricket all season. So to ask him to, I think he was the last over to defend three
last over.
last over was a bit much. So he took a bit of tap, but the spin, we said the spin would help the Rocks, and it certainly did. You look at that game and you think, well, how the heck did the Rocks lose that game? But that's the nature of T20 cricket. You've got to finish that off. And fair play to Aaron. Thank you, sir. Another one who hasn't played more cricket this season. Fair play.
Look, Aaron is something else. Aaron is a great entertainer when it comes to batting. Next game, the Tuskers went all the way down to Cape Town. They were to take on Western Province. They were bowled out for 115 for 7. Western Province made light work, 116 for 3 after 12.3 overs. Keith Dudgeon, 26 of 21. Alindi Lemtlechwa, 24 of 20. Simmons took 2 for 20. Berger, 2 for 22. In response, John O'Bird, top of the order, 61 not out of 33. Tony Tazor, 25 for 16. Dudgeon took 2 wickets for 22. Easy win for Western Province with a bonus point. Yeah, Tim, we've spoken enough about the Tuskers. It's just another tail. And my only question is there a win for them somewhere along the line? Because they surely can't lose 14 in a row. Because it looks right now that it's gonna be that way unless if something drastic changes.
Yeah, it's a tough one because the nature of T20 cricket is they have to win a game somewhere on the way, but on their performances, I struggle to see it. Um, it's a real shame. It's a real shame. It's a real shame for the tournament because you want
Mm,
T20 cricket brings all the teams closer together and makes it competitive. Um, but on a positive note for the province, John O'Byrne again, man of the match, batter of the match. Um, that boy again is
everything.
another guy who has been a lot this season. Um, simply because of that, top six is really settled. It's very difficult for him to get in to the top six at the moment. But I'm delighted for him. I really, really
Yeah.
am.
Look, I
It's
think
going to be
he's a
interesting to see
name.
what they do next season for him. But I'm delighted for him. Great, great, great stuff. Yeah,
Look, I think he's a name that could possibly come up in SA 20 as an opening option at the top. I think he's gonna. This tournament might be something of a CV for him to kind of prove that of the openers that are there that are young, he's one of those guys that might come in. Remember, we've also got Steve Stark, we've got Luander Pretorius also waiting in the wings for the Titans guys to go to the IPL to come through. So there's a lot of talent from a batting perspective, and yeah, we're gonna talk about this about the World Cup, but there's no reason why we can't win. Um, yes. Dolphins. Dick's game. Dolphins hosted the Warriors in Durban, and they won by 7 wickets. John Smuts, 30 of 35. It's not a T20 innings, but yeah, it's a pitch issue there. 27 of 23 was Jason Smith. Marco Janssen, 2 for 24. Sia Simetu, 2 for 15. Javesh Pillay for the Warriors, 42 of 27. Matthew Bretzka, 31 of 24. They made light work of the 121. They won by 7 wickets. Javesh Pillay coming in again, former SA under 19 player, getting a chance now at the Warriors. He's played the full season for them and he's coming through for them. You can see Siasimetu getting a chance. We spoke about Whitehead and Alder, excuse me, but Siasimetu still cementing his place as their top spinner there. So I think the Warriors are in that game presented themselves as the team that we kind of think they are. But obviously with Janssen and Nokia leaving, it's going to be a different prospect going forward.
indeed, indeed. This was again, we talked about the pitch earlier. This was a very difficult pitch to score runs. Nobody found it easy, apart from Jefferson Pillay. It was a real struggle for either batters to get any sort of momentum into the innings at all. Um, it wasn't a good exhibition for T20 cricket.
Mm.
It has to be said. Um, and troubling times for the Dolphins. You would think
Yeah.
that team is set up to win or go far this tournament, but it hasn't been a good start for the tournament for them.
2 losses in a row. Luckily, it's a double round, so we've got 12 games to go. They might still find something compared to their Northern KZN members, who many of us are asking ourselves a lot of questions about. Okay, and final game of the week. The Dragons were bowled out for 103 in their 20 overs. Um, the Lions, I beg your pardon, I do apologize, scored 104 for 3 to win that game, or 4 for 1, sorry, to win that game by 9 wickets. Mutasami, 33 for 26. Junaid Dawood took 3 for 23 in his debut for the Lions in T20. Guna Mapaka continued with 2 for 11. Reza Hendricks also took some wickets in that game, by the way. He scored 57 not out for 30 balls. Rickleton 34 of 26. And Bamanye Klengle, who is something to look forward to at Northwest. Took 1 for 22. The Lions won by 9 wickets. I did commentary on that game, Tim, and all I could say was the approach for Northwest wasn't great. They I found them to be too aggressive at the power play. They felt like they always needed to get a boundary every over instead of trying to just tick it along and move the fielders around with singles and twos. and then the boundaries will present themselves. I thought they lacked a little bit of patience. Mikael Prince batted really well, even though he got 15 of 12. Really some lusty blows there from him. Renan Fontondo as well. But at the end of the day, nothing to scare the Lions. I thought the Lions adapted really well to a slow pitch than the Wanderers. That pitch just required spin. And they found anybody and anybody who could ball spin. Reza Hendricks, one of them. He took a really lovely wicket, dismissing. Who did he dismiss? Ruben Harman. He bowled him cleanly. So that team looks fit and raring to go. Lucius Pamela got a wicket as well. Delano Portgita came in into the side as well and added a little bit more with the ball. And Delano just always gives you 100%. So it's big brother bullying little brother there, the way I see it. But yeah, that's what it was, Tim.
Yeah, I can't add anything else. I wasn't the. I can't add anything. I don't think I saw much of it, to be honest. I must have been watching one of the other games. Yeah.
Yeah, look,
But all I can say,
they need to
all I
sort
can
out
say is
that batting lineup, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
Yes, Tim.
All I can say is they need to improve. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, but you look at them and you're like, you don't have, like last season they had Wesley Marshall, they had Chris Britts, guys who could actually take the run rate over, who could score at a high run rate. Now they do not. Reynard Fantonda is a fantastic batter. I think T20 needs a lot of work in, and maybe this is the season he needs to work. Vian Libba is no longer the Vian Libba of old. He can still give you what you want, but relying on Vian Libba is not going to be much. Mikael Prince is on a rookie contract. So you tell me what you expect from the rookie. And then Lesiba Ngwepe, run a ball. We need that Lesiba of last season who was finding boundaries on the odd occasion. I thought yesterday he got hamstrung by the Lions. Senran Mutisami is the best player in that team by far, bat and ball. And he needs to trust himself with the ball a lot more. I don't understand why they didn't bowl Caleb Seleka to start off with. I'd have gone with all my spinners, even in the power play, just to try to give the Lions something different. Even Caleb felt like he was bowling within himself. So yeah, they just need a lot of work. I think time will help them. And I still think the Dragons might end up winning, but the Lions look as advertised, and maybe even slightly better than advertised. Let's have a look at the Division 1 table just to give you a sense. The Warriors with 2 bonus point wins, up on 10 points. Lions with 1 bonus point win on 9. Western Province in third on 9. Titans in fourth with 8 points. And then the teams that have not won anything. The Dolphins, the Rocks, the Tuskers, as well as the Dragons. So it's an intriguing start to the season, but this is it's still early, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't change much from there. Going to the fixtures this week. Tomorrow, Wednesday, there's Western Province are hosting Northwest at Newlands at 6 p.m. The Dolphins host the Lions in Durban at 6 p.m. And the Titans host the Warriors at Centurion at 6 p.m. So some really good, strong cricket, especially between the Dolphins and Lions. The Titans and Warriors as well, 2 top of the table clashes already coming through. And a repeat of the One-Day Cup final there with Western Province hosting Northwest. Then on Friday, you've got the Tuskers taking on Northwest now in Durban. The Rocks host the Dolphins, and the Lions will host the Titans in a EXK derby that everybody should be watching, because you might see some of the future Proteas going on. Gwena probably bowling up against Steve Stolko, Luandre Pretorius, and it's going to be really, really cool. So that's Division 1. Let's go through some Division 2 results. They started as well. Northern Cape won their first game last week, Wednesday. They scored 166 in Kimberley after bowling out the Garden Route Badgers for 163 for 6. So they won by 4 wickets with 1 ball remaining. So that was a tight one there.
Squeaky bum time. Squeaky bum time. when you're talking about promotion, squeaky bum time.
Yeah, they needed to win that, because in the next game they didn't win. Limpopo won their first T20 game of the season. They scored 178 for 5, and they restricted border to 171 for 8. Really good win there for that Limpopo side. Really, really good work. Then the next game, Mpumalanga beat the Easterns in White River 202 for 5. Easterns were bowled out for 180 for 7. That's another team that needs to be looked at. Something's seriously off with Easterns, but great win for Mpumalanga and Limpopo in this tournament. We did mention that Mpumalanga might win a few games, and they've started already.
Yeah, and we also said Limpopo because they have got youth on their side. Two newish unions, they've relied on youth, and that youth exuberance in the shorter format has come off.
Yeah,
There are several players in both teams that can hit the ball. That's been the difference. They can hit the ball, and that has been a large part in why they've been successful. And teams like the Easterns are relying on the old guard, guys that used to be able to do that, Wesley, and they're not doing the business. And that's
yeah.
been a huge problem for them.
Yes, most definitely. And then on Saturday, Southwestern Districts, the Garden Route Badgers lost their second game in Bloom against the Knights. They were put into bat. They scored 166 for 5, and the Knights ended up with 166 for 67 for 6, winning by 4 wickets. Easterns lost their second game, this time in Benoni. They're losing to Border, the Linyati. They lost by Duckworth Lewis. They lost by 16 runs on the Douglas Lewis method. They managed to score 187 for 4, so they might have felt a little bit hard done by, but with the way the Linyati were going, chances are they probably would have gone over the line. And then last match on Sunday, Limpopo taking on the Northern Cape Heat in Bulugwane. Northern Cape Heat Limpopo putting up 158 for 8, and Northern Cape Heat bowled out for 145. Limpopo get their second win, Tim, in this tournament.
That was a magnificent victory from Limpopo because for large parts of that second innings, it looked like Northern Cape would have enough. They never quite were never quite scoring fast enough, which, as I said, them and Easterns have got a similar problem. They've got old guard guys that either are better suited to the longer format or used to be able to hit the ball and now at the back end of their careers are struggling to do those sorts of attributes that you need in
Yeah.
this format. Hugely for Limpopo. They could really do something special in this tournament. I'm not gonna go. I'm just gonna say something special. That's all I'm gonna
Sure.
say.
Look, if you're a Limpopo fan, take a photo of this sitting on top of the log with 8 points. The Knights on 4, Mpumalanga on 4, Border on 4 points with 1 win each, and Northern Cape with 1 win. Teams that don't have a win are the Garden Route Badgers as well as Eastern. So, yeah, it's a good time to be a Limpopo supporter right now, and congratulations to them on leading the Division 2 log so far. And then from a fixtures perspective this week, we start tomorrow with the Garden Route Badgers hosting Easterns and Oudtshoorn. That's a battle of the basement dwellers.
Ooh.
Then you've got Border against the Knights in East London. That's the Linyati, the Eastern Cape Linyati against the Knights in East London. Then on Thursday, you've got the Mpumalanga Rhinos taking on Limpopo in the top of the table clash of the newbies, the new provinces. That's happening in White River. In the next game on Friday is Easterns hosting Northern Cape and Benoni at 1 p.m. That should be a good one as well. The Garden Route Badgers, the Southwestern Districts host Linyati as well on Saturday, and then the Knights host Limpopo on Sunday. So lots of cricket on the go. Some really, really good games, especially for Limpopo supporters. You've got Mpumalanga and you've got the Knights coming up. So it should be quite an interesting one because Limpopo could go to Bloemfontein being unbeaten after 3, which is something I
All I
don't
will,
think. Yeah.
all I will say to Border and Limpopo: get Sharks name early and you have got done half the job. That
Okay.
that that Knights team relies so heavily on him. They've got
Like,
talent, but they rely heavily on him. Get him early, and you have done half the job.
yeah. Look, there's lots of other weekend fixtures from the CSA T20. So please do have a look at the CSA website on their Twitter account just to check all those times and dates. But there's going to be some interesting results coming in the second week, and we'll be talking about that in the following week, Monday, as a recap on that. So outside of that, good luck to the SA emerging ladies in Ghana. Please bring back the gold. We That's all we ever want. But please do bring back the gold. Good luck to Nondu and the ladies, and then also the men who are going to be starting after that. So later in the week, we'll be talking about them next week as well as to what's going on with them. But outside of that, Tim, it's goodbye and lesale kakahiso.